Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today we have a real treat where we get to talk to Scott Brick, one of the most incredible narrators, I'm going to tell you. But we're also going to talk about a World War II book that is really a true story. The book is called Missing, a World War II story of love, courage, and friendship. Let's go ahead and watch the trailer for a moment.
As he pulled up from his strafing run, Second Lieutenant Donald N. Evans looked back over his shoulder and saw the Tiger tank bellowing black smoke. Suddenly, his P-47 was rocked by German anti-aircraft cannon shell. Don's wingman screamed into the radio, "Evans, you're on fire! Bail out!" The engine exploded and his plane burst into flames. From dirt-poor, small-town roots, Don was the quintessential all-American boy, high school student body president, and star athlete. At age 18, he was attending college, had fallen in love, and appeared destined for a bright future. Then, fate stepped in. Don joined the United States military along with millions of other young Americans and went to war. Before going overseas, Don married his high school sweetheart, Laura Jean. They promised to write every day.
On Christmas Eve, 1944, as I lay on the floor by the Christmas tree, wondering how Don was spending his time that night, I had a disturbing premonition. I knew something had happened to him, and I couldn't get it out of my mind.
Against all odds, Don survived bailing out of his burning plane seconds before it crashed. Lost, cold, and hungry, he spent Christmas Eve, huddled under a pine tree, wondering if he'd ever see his family again. Ahead lay capture by Nazi SS troops, a 200-mile forced march, near starvation, abuse by guards, and internment in a German POW camp. This is his story.
Whew, I get kind of choked up just watching that. So, Scott, I think we're all lucky that you are the narrator for this because you have a true talent, but you've narrated hundreds of books. What drew you to Missing?
It's such a true story. I think what we just saw and heard, that may have been Ken himself, the author. I don't know whose voice that was. It sounded so authentic, but it was the authenticity of the story that really drew me to it. And I'm choked up. I'm remembering so many of the stories, experiencing them through the perspective of a son trying to understand his father, a father who never really wanted to talk about this stuff, but who wrote about it nevertheless. And I know a lot of members of the greatest generation found it difficult to speak about their experiences. And Don did, to the extent that he was able. And his letters survive. His diary survives. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that Ken found it and that he shared it. It's one of the more intimate stories of love and loss and warfare and God, desperation, and just that loneliness that they spoke about. He spent Christmas Eve. Look, I live for Christmas. Anybody who knows me will tell you I'm the ultimate Christmas enthusiast, and he spent that Christmas Eve wondering if he would ever see his family again. And I just remember sobbing as I was reading it. And Gina, my production manager, when she came to me and she said, I'm pretty booked up. I'm really busy. And she said, "This is really good. Do you have time to fit it in?" And I took one look at it and said, "I'll fit it in. I will make time. Believe me, it's just so good." I wish everybody watching this right now already had the experience of having read it. It's such a beautiful story.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you completely. I have the books, the physical books, as well as the audio, and I think this is one of those books too that you really want both. The audio is fantastic, and it's really nice to feel the characters, but in the actual book, you get to see some images as well, and so some of those images we have, and you can see. This is where he did the 200-mile march, and there's the map of his prison camp. And this is Donald Evans, who the book is about. And Kenneth Evans was the one that found these letters. And many of the letters that he wrote while he was in the prison camp never actually made it to her until later. But the fact that he had her gave him the strength to keep fighting and to stay living. And they just had such a sweet story. And I think that might be something that sets this apart is, yes, it is history and it is a story of survival, but it's also a love story too.
It is. And it's a love story between Don and Laura Jean, and there's a number of other men in the story, musketeers. They call themselves the Musketeers.
The Three Musketeers.
Yes.
And the Five. And their
right,
friendship.
exactly.
Yeah.
And their friendship. And so in many ways, it's a love story amongst them as well. It has nothing to do with physical love. It's the brotherhood that comes about because you serve together. And I found myself captivated by Don, by Laura Jean, by all of the Musketeers. And yes, Bob and Jerry, and it was humbling. I got to be honest. I grew up at a time when there were a lot of World War II veterans around, and there are so few today. And I remember being at my bank here in Los Angeles, and it's about 3 years ago. And a gentleman came walking out of the front door. He had a great deal of difficulty walking. He was walking with a cane, and he had a baseball cap on, and it said World War II veteran. And I had his service record, and I went up to him and I said, "I don't know what to say to thank you." But I was also conscious that this might be the last time I meet a World War II veteran. And given what we're going through today, refighting a lot of the things that we fought for back then, I just we can't forget what they did for us. So again, it was a privilege getting to work on this book.
Yeah. And we actually have an image of you while you were working on it. And you're actually in your studio right now. But this was you recording the book.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit more about your experience with that, because you mentioned that you're recording it and then a story just really hits you. Was there a story that made you have to press the pause button and just sit down for a minute? Constantly.
well, there are stories that I don't want to give away. There are moments where I got kind of kicked in the gut emotionally. I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. Um, and I don't want to give those away. There's some things that happen at the end of the book. I don't want those who haven't read it or listened to it. I don't want to take away that experience that they'll get when these moments happen. But instead, I'll tell there's a Christmas story. On that, they mentioned it in the trailer, the forced march through Germany on Christmas, and this woman comes out. This woman with no home, who had been bombed out of her house. She saw all of these American prisoners being marched through her town, and she came out to bring them candy. And just little things like that, you know. It's in the overall perspective of the book, it's not the most important story, but it's all the little moments that add up to how important the overall story was. And I want to say I was recording this, I believe it was October when I was recording this. So it's the wind up to Christmas. And of course, I'm getting into the holiday spirit. And I remember reading that and just sobbing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when I had an opportunity to speak with the author, Kenneth D. He talked about how that is something that was always a really important story to his dad. And while his dad didn't want to talk about much about the war, that's a story he would talk about. And that in and of itself is really powerful because, you know, for those that have experienced traumatic things in war, he could still pull out something good. And another thing we've mentioned about something good was he developed this camaraderie with the men in his unit. And, you know, they had such great friendships that Bob Sharp actually was just, I believe Bob Sharp is the one that is still alive today. I think he, you know, and it's one of those things where, wow, this book not only has, you know, letters in it, we've got journal entries. The author, Kenneth D. was able to collaborate with Bob Sharp, and that's very different for most World War II stories out there. They're kind of guessing or doing hearsay, but this is 100% factual, all done with very, very recorded and researched things to this. And they had some funny stuff too.
Absolutely. Yeah, extraordinarily so. There's, again, I don't want to give away too much, but it's, I don't think it will come as a surprise that, look, this is a story about war and not everybody returns. And there is a character who's mentioned prominently in the book who he didn't make it back. I don't want to say who, but Ken spoke in the last chapters of the book about how he thought he had reached the end of the road. He thought that, well, this is as much of the story as I can tell. And there was very little that he could share about this one character's part of the story because he didn't make it home. And at the end, a relative of that man got in touch, the 11th hour, right? Right as Ken was about to wrap this whole thing up, and found out that this relative is essentially the historian of his uncle's memory. He's the curator of his uncle's memory. And in the 11th hour, he was able to share with Ken all of these letters that he wrote home One of which that relative he listened to the audiobook, and then he asked for my address, told me who he was, and says, "Do you mind? Could you give me your address?" I sent it to him, and next thing I knew, in the mail, I had a letter home from this man, this character in the book, more than a character in the book, but I was holding in my hands not a Xerox, but the original letter that he wrote home to his family. And I got to be honest, every day that I've had it in my possession, it's in my office upstairs, and I feel unworthy to have it. I feel like the family should have it. It's sacred. It was written 2 days before he didn't come home.
Yeah.
A scared young man riding from the theater of war to let his family know how much he loved and missed them. And my hands were shaking as I opened this letter, and it's everything about this book is personal and lovely and thoroughly researched, especially because of the contribution that relative made by saying, "Hey, do you want my uncle's letters? Do you want to read his perspective?" And Ken said yes, and incorporated it all. And it's a different book because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Scott. I hope that our viewers can tell how much we really love this book, and it's such a joy. And especially with the 4th of July, coming up, and then there's always an opportunity for us to remember those that have come before and have sacrificed, whether it be the 4th of July or Veterans Day or all the other opportunities out there. I hope that this will become a part of something that they can use to think of the good people out there that have really sacrificed a lot.
I hope so too. I echo that. It was Memorial Day recently, as we record this, and I'm reminded that Memorial Day isn't a holiday. It's a day to remember that all gave some, but some gave all. And this story is, I truly hope that there are those who will go and honor the 4th of July, the birth of our nation, by reading or listening to this book. It's a wonderful story.
Yes, I completely agree. Well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to show right after this our links where you can go and learn more about Scott and his books. And we'll see you next time.